So good morning, everyone. Welcome to Satsang. Let's make some silence first. The quest for liberation is not a matter of curiosity, speculation. To be able to walk the real path, a real path, there must be a decision to do it. You cannot pick the spiritual path. You cannot look a little bit and then go back. Because if you're not all the way in, you won't see nothing. There's no testing. You'll be tested. Either you're in or you're out. No middle term. And if you're not all the way in, whatever you're seeing has nothing to do with the process of liberation. And that without knowing this, you'll be convinced that has something to do with liberation, that is the spiritual process, that you're seeing things, and that's how it goes. But it isn't. It has nothing to do. So good morning once again, and welcome. So these first beginning words, they are very important because many have this idea, let me try a little bit to see how it goes. Let me test for a while. And there are many directions away from the narrow path. Many, infinite directions away from the narrow path. Just one direction into the narrow path, your direction. It's not something outside. It is your direction, and that's just one. And to find your narrow path, it's difficult. It takes a lot of overcoming your own delusions, in a sense that you have to go beyond what you believe to be right, even or especially in spiritual terms. And this has many layers. So it's not that easy. But the main ingredient for that to become possible is the absolute, unshaken decision to go all in to the end. Because without that, you will not see anything. You will see some of the other directions, those infinite directions, away from the narrow path, and not the narrow path. You will have experience for sure, this and that will be there, and it can be bad, shanti, good, whatever, but it's not your narrow path. So this idea is naive. And even by going all in, until you reach that narrow path, you'll be having experiences of certain realities / delusions, but not necessarily. They are not necessarily it. And I've seen this many times. Many ideas about the spiritual path, many experiences, but when it starts seriously, seekers go like, whoa, what is this? Is this normal? What's happening? Never heard anything like this. And of course, you have many, how do you say it? Many examples of what isn't and very few of what is, because the real seeker is engaged, completely absorbed into a spiritual process. He's not making a diary, a journal, or something like that. He's not posting online every few minutes his own breakthroughs, difficulties, whatever. Either he's doing one thing or he's doing the other. So it's very difficult to have access. Maybe after liberation, he will share. Maybe, but that's not certain. So what you have more available is that which isn't, or someone who is telling a story of someone else. And even philosophy is selling something in a way. Sometimes in a good sense, sometimes in a bad sense, whatever that means. But by compassion, for example, Many philosophies tend to lure the seeker, bring him to him, and pointing the highest realization, supreme happiness, as a goal to be achieved by those who are in the world and seeking that happiness. And its philosophy is saying, look, it's not there, it is here. But that's just a shift in the direction of greed. It doesn't take much far, but it can open doors. Everything can open doors. So in a way, it is pulling you inward. Philosophies are attracting you, like everything else, more or less. But the difficult part, the part when the things become serious, this is not much discussed by the absence of this experience, and also in the sense that it doesn't bring anyone. So this has its purpose at a certain level, at the level of students that are learning spiritual philosophy or something like that. Because eventually, either you want it very much or it will backfire. Because if you can manage to give the steps and things start really, then usually it collapses. So if it was an outer experience, an experiment, you could, okay, let's test. Let's see what happens if I mix this ingredient with that ingredient. I can observe it. But in this case, you are the experience. The experiment is you. And if your vision is not aligned, if you're not completely into it, your experience will be conditioned. Your observation will be conditioned. So whatever you will gather from it, it's not it. So it's like imagining that to reach that water and see how it is, which is very distance, then I can in no way come close to put my foot inside. That I will have to jump to test. But I will jump and test, enter just a little bit in the water. Like I could jump very high and then just touch the water. It's impossible. Either you dive or you don't, or you remain up. So what is this for? Is for you to understand how limit is the vision that you are having from your spiritual process, from whatever you're experiencing. And don't be sad with these statistics, but 99% that you're straying, you're not coming close to the narrow path. The long journey of learning, of spirituality, is a process to try to come close to that narrow path. This is why it's a long journey. It can be made much shorter. But to be made much shorter, certain steps are there to be given. And these certain steps, they can be given, well, By seekers of truth, I would say only, but I cannot say only, because depending on the size of the greed, certain steps can be given. The difficulty for the seeker of well-being is that he can make the same sacrifices, but he cannot maintain that long enough, because it's not a sacrifice, it is an investment. And greed is a fire that consumes within, and you don't have time to wait. You need a fast profit. But usually they are made just by seekers of truth. So, for those who are following this line, just putting their feet on the water, not diving completely in, and they really desire liberation, but are fooling themselves with, yes, I can cross the river with 1 foot in each canoe. Whatever you are seeing, it's not it. It has nothing to do with it. It is what's possible for you to see, and that's completely different. And it's not that you don't want, it's that you don't know the name of the game, the rules of the game, how the game works. You think your mind is there to assist you in your liberation process. It's there to make decisions about what's better, what's worst, that it is there to interpret for the best. You don't know that your mind is there to distract you, to make you waste time, to delude yourself. And you embrace your mind convictions like your own, and with pride also. It's like you're producing your own poison of ignorance and taking it gladly. And if you don't wake up to that reality, things will not change, will continue the same. Just wasting time. Okay, so let's go to some questions from Instagram, I think. I have a question. I'm allowing the thoughts to come. It's one particular negative thought pattern which keeps on coming in a loop. And no matter how many times I have ignored it or let it be, it comes and it knows it can scare me. Yes. How do I let go of that or say attachment to that desire and drop it off? I have been trying, but it's not working. Would really appreciate your help. So first of all, I would say to you that made this question to go to your YouTube channel. And if you haven't seen, surely you haven't, see those videos, that 14 video series called Igniting the Sacred Fires, where I speak about the spiritual path from A to Z with many, not all of course, but many of the essential aspects of it. It will be for sure clarifying. And well, the thing is, what is there to keep you distracted? That it is working, it will be maintained, like I've explained previously. And like I've explained in other satsangs, nothing is innocent. So the thoughts that are going through your mind, or what you call your mind, they are not innocent, they have a purpose. The purpose is to keep you distracted. And whatever works, works and it's maintained. What doesn't work, well, falls or remains, but it's harmless. And it doesn't matter. So when you try to solve a specific thought, well, in the case it's because it is bothering you in some sense, because it is threatening you, because it's feeling you unsafe, and all of this. But you're concerned with one thought, one specific thought pattern, for specific reasons, because you are afraid of it, because it holds power onto you. And by fighting it, you're giving it actually more power. And I've seen many times seekers picking up spiritual wisdom and trying to applying it for worldly purposes. And it doesn't work. It may seem to work in the beginning, but then eventually it doesn't. Because the right mindset is missing. So a seeker of truth is not trying to work on one specific thought pattern. He knows that the noise which is in the mind is there, so that you cannot listen, tune in with divine guidance. So that noise is there for you to be stuck into it and not moving beyond, not being able to listen. Because the voice of guidance is very, very subtle. So if you're only trying to solve one thought pattern, you're actually feeding it, not realizing how it works. So the meditation technique, mantras, all are there to replace that noise, to purge that noise out of there. But if it's not for liberation, there's a limit, a very short limit of how deep it can go. But eventually, in the game, mind is there to distract you. And whatever works to keep you on a tight leash, investing in the usuals, it will be used. It can be the voice of seduction, a thought that is seducing you into some direction, or it can be a thought that is crushing you. It doesn't matter, as long as it works. It will be used. So meditation, one of its aspects is to separate the I from the object, from the mind, from emotions, from sensations. So first, you absorb observe the object. You concentrate on the object, the technique, whatever it is. But as you continue to do this, one of the things that starts getting birth there is this notion of separateness and the notion of I'm here prior to those things. So you focus into one, abstracting from the rest. And as it goes through more and more, and it's very subtle, eventually you will see it is there, but it has been building. The awareness of your presence, separate, prior, with a big distance from the mind, emotion, sensations. And this is where it becomes possible to, instead of focus on the object, focus on yourself, your presence. That is moving a step closer. But as this distance is not there, whatever thoughts are there, they are your thoughts. And you can do this, oh, it's not my thoughts, it's not me. When things are very light, when it becomes intense, it's very difficult to cut this identification. And like I've explained in other satsangs, it's not by fear of it. That's not the correct motivation. It doesn't work. If you're afraid to suffer, and you're doing this because you're afraid to suffer, you're a hostage. It's like someone points a gun in your head, do this or else I'll shoot. And you do because you don't want to die. But if you're seeking freedom from that situation, even full of fear of dying, you'll say, okay, shoot. And you will deal with that. And that's what ends the power that these things have over you. But you have to be willing to suffer, willing to face suffering, to remain present in the face of your fears, not doing anything to change them. This is how you conquer your freedom from them. But freedom has to be your goal, or else you're so conditioned in your delusion that is just another aspect of it. So it doesn't have anywhere to go. So what is the name of the game and what are the rules? The name of the game is freedom, liberation. And it's like you're trying to overcome nature, where that body that seems to be you, it's not. And the body, the mind, the emotions are there to keep you distracted, to take you on a journey of their own. And you are seeking liberation from that which you think you are, from that which you appear to be, from that which you feel you are, and realizing who you really are directly. And these perceptions, physical, emotional, mental perceptions, these are the enemies, the infiltrated ones. These are not your friends. The only friend is guidance, and guidance has to be, you need to be worthy. For being worthy, you have to be serious, completely committed, and pass through the tests. Because if your amount of seriousness is well good, then tests will come to see if it really stands, even for you to see. And it is through these tests that you show if you're really worthy of guidance or not. And these tests continue because it changes the levels of difficulties. So the name of the game is not a better life / better dream. It's not about reaching somewhere, going somewhere. It's about liberation. With no time for anything else. It's not a hobby. Nah, I can't answer this question. Sorry, too much. So I'm doing meditation, not regular, but I want to do what is correct process. How results come? Please tell me the correct method of meditation. So first of all, correct method of meditation needs to have the correct practitioner of meditation. And this, well, more or less I've given you through this entire video, I've spoken about that. So you can listen from the beginning and you'll get the image. No need to repeat. So I want to start my spiritual journey. By all means do. A real spiritual journey starts with a longing for liberation, a call for liberation. And the seeker of truth is not a professional spiritual person. Some have a spiritual background, many don't, not even close to that. They have very, very normal lives with what is called very, very normal worldly people. And they come to a point that something snaps and they have to change complete course. They are not only seekers of truth, they are also world teachers because they come into the midst of worldly people and they provoke them, they shock their world, and they give them direction without they even knowing it or without others knowing it. They give them perspective because the path of fire is one thing. The path of spirituality is another thing. So trying to be a better person, increasing your love towards God, dedicating yourself to that, it doesn't mean that you're a seeker of truth. Not yet. It doesn't mean that it is a path of fire. Not yet. They are not necessarily the same thing. It is good, of course. It can open doors, but it doesn't mean it is that fiery path. And when that begins, doesn't matter where you are, what you know, it doesn't matter. You will build that path from scratch, and it will be very difficult. But at each step that you are doing that, you're planting a seed. You're planting a flame in the ground, a flame that will light the path for others. Even without understanding, they are seeing it. They are not understanding it, they are fighting with it, but they are seeing it. And eventually in their lives, in some moment, not there, not then, but eventually, as life starts teaching them, they will have a direction because they have seen it already. They know that there is something else, even if that moment it doesn't fit their plate, but it exists. And that will give them perspective, vision, something that was impossible previously. So this is one of the reasons why seekers of truth many times awaken in a normal life, in a worldly life, and have to struggle to find their direction. Because your spiritual process, you have to deal with it, taking care of it, only for you. But it's never just about you. But if you're not living it just for you, it will not be serious, it will not be real. But it's never only about you. So people tend to complain that, oh, I haven't met anyone in my life that had the same life to help me with this and that. But that has a point. You're opening a path, creating one, showing to those around you that there's something there different. There's an alternative. There's something real. And of course, when you're doing it, they will not accept it. They will fight it to make you same as them. But eventually in their lives, humility will come. Life will teach them something, that they will need a direction, and there is something there. So many times a seeker of truth wakes up in the world, in his world of complete spiritual dryness. Like nothing in him, nothing in those around him. But the calling comes, and he has to reinvent himself without knowing where he is going, what he is doing. It has to go. And that is the fiery path. And it's different. So if you're devoted to spirituality in many senses, even if you're a monk or a nun, it doesn't mean yet that it is the fiery path. And that depends a lot on what is happening there. If your experiences are building something, it is one thing. If your experiences are collapsing you over and over, over and over, it is something else. This is the fiery path. So in this first example, it can be a preparation for you to develop that relationship with God, to establish yourself in it, and maybe one day, either in this or in the next life, you're ready for the next step. So when the calling comes, there's no preconditions. circumstances, life circumstances, say nothing. Nature has its own plans also. I will answer your question now. So, how can I unlock my true self? What is the key to fulfill my purpose in life? Well, the purpose in life, the purpose of existence is realization of existence for the seeker of truth, of course. The one who is identified with the longing of its own soul, the destiny of its own soul, the source. A seeker of well-being is identified with the destiny of the body-mind complex, his experiences, expectations about them. These are opposite directions. So if your goal is liberation, then you can listen to this video from the beginning and see that those 14 video series, Igniting the Sacred Fires. It's very clarifying. I will answer your question now. Hello, Shima. Apart from meditation, I focus on everything I do during the day. I don't give myself a minute. Calm is exhausting. I focus each moment during my day. It is equivalent as sitting meditation. It depends. What do you mean by focus? Are you observing what is happening? What does this mean? Because it depends on what this means. Is your mind focusing on silence, abstracting from everything what the body is doing? Is it using what is being done just a way to hold on to something and not let it wander? Or are you observing each moment to be aware of what is happening at each moment? What is it? But the question, and I will say this to you because it's not the first time you ask questions and you're honest, really trying on that safe space. Of course, let us not forget that because that is very important. So at each moment, the question that you should be doing is not, instead of wanting to fool yourself and to see how good you are doing, but ask this question: how am I fooling myself? What am I doing, and in which sense am I doing what I'm doing to delay my process? In which sense that which I'm doing is going against my desire for liberation? With these questions and an intent to see the answers, things become very clear. Because coming to the narrow path takes time, gives work. Coming out of it, it's very easy. It's very slippery. Very, very, very slippery. And just let us be honest here. You're doing a lot. You're putting a lot of effort in what you're doing. Yes, for sure. Because in that way you can sleep better at night. But you're doing this in your space of protection, preserving your life, attachments, everything is there. So it's like not looking at the process of liberation as the life of a seeker of truth as a whole. As a whole. But as a small detail in that character's life. So this amount of effort is in part yet for you to sleep better at night, convincing you that you're doing your level best, instead of looking what you are overlooking. Because of fears and attachments. And this is very important. You know, when someone is going to be busted for a heavy crime, they tend to confess a smaller crime to see if they can get away. It's more or less like this. Because you already know a lot of things, but they are too much. You're focusing your level best, using your time, so that you don't have to face that fact. Overlooking something which is more difficult, in a sense, to sleep better. Like, I'm doing my duty. And we could go on to the details if you would send that clarification. But this is the main. This is the main thing. So, as long as you don't break the cycle, it's not going to work. And you keep on walking in circles. And then if you are focusing here or there, that's details. Details. So we can look at, oh, he is working very hard, doing all this work here, gigantic work. And we see it, oh, but he is very brave and courageous, and I think they are both the same words. But sometimes this is done not because of being brave to do this, but because it's not being able to do something else, and this is a distraction. I will tell you once again, there's only time for liberation, nothing else. Whatever else is there is distraction. Fears in the absence of guidance, they are guidance, and they show you where you need to cross. And by crossing your fears, by exposing yourself to them, then you may become ready for guidance. Guidance may take you seriously. And that may be the beginning of the journey. Until then, just a small child playing with the toys in the playground. Nothing to be taken seriously. There are those who cannot go further than that. There are those who can. Well, that's what you say. You don't want any attachment. But I have the impression, I'm sensing here that, well, there's something very big that you are avoiding going around. Now, if you want, you find out what that is. But I think the most important part has been said already. Okay. Everybody has courage for certain things, for some things. That's not the most important. As a seeker of truth, find your fears. And you know that eventually it is those fears that keep you bound, that keep you in bondage. And you must reach a point where your mind doesn't get impressed, where you're not, when it cannot bully you, blackmail you. So whatever attachments, fragilities you have, face them, get rid of them. Don't wait for them to go away by themselves. Just because you're not experiencing them, it doesn't mean that they are not there. It means that you have built your life running from these things. Sorry. And this is what a seeker of well-being does. He avoids pain. And that is the opposite that a seeker of truth does. He walks through pain. Okay. Okay, so for those who are waiting to know about the silent meditation retreats, it's going to start on May. We are still finishing last details of the website so that we can share. But the first retreat will be from the 1st of May to the 12th. Yes. And eventually the website will be finished and we will share the informations. But for those who are waiting to know, it's going to start. And again, reminding that these retreats in this sense were shared for others outside the ashram because of this lack of perspective on what is intense meditation, intense work, and they are supposed to open a door for those who are really seeking and have no fear of working for it. So eventually I will share the website here and it will be shared on the social medias. Okay. So next satsang will be Saturday, 9:30 in the morning, Brazilian time, UTC -3. Until then, make the best use of your time. Make it real. That's